In June 2022, in a span of fewer than 3 months after Russia initiated its offensive in Ukraine, European leaders convened in Lugano, Switzerland, to deliberate on the country's reconstruction. Ukraine is gearing up for what it dubs as the most extensive reconstruction endeavor since World War II, necessitating hundreds of billions of euros in investments spread over decades. This funding is not just about recovering from the wreckage inflicted by Russia, it's also about helping hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians seeking safety. To fathom whether Ukraine's economy can ultimately thrive, we must first understand the reasons behind its underperformance prior to the conflict. Despite possessing a highly educated workforce, abundant natural resources, a globally acclaimed IT industry, and proficiency in nuclear energy, Ukraine has grappled with realizing its economic potential. The nation has faced massive deindustrialization and a population decline, marked by a substantial manufacturing slump and a 50% drop in population since 1991, attributable to low birth rates and emigration to more prosperous countries. Following the collapse of the Soviet Union, Ukraine's economy became dominated by corrupt and inefficient economic elites in the form of oligarchs. Combined with the legacy of Soviet bureaucracy, these factors deterred investors, causing Ukraine's economy to stagnate and fail to diversify. Consequently, Ukraine's GDP performance has been alarmingly inferior, nearly 1/9 the size of the European Union's and much smaller than resource-rich Russia or subsidized Belarus. Even before the invasion of Ukraine, the country's economic structure centered on 3 main sectors, collectively constituting 73% of its exports, all reliant on geographical factors, costly infrastructure, and access to global markets. The first of these sectors is agriculture. Ukraine's historical strength in agriculture stems from a network of dams, reservoirs, and irrigation systems established along the Dnieper River in the 1950s. This fertile soil has allowed Ukraine to be a major agricultural force. In 2021, Ukraine's agricultural products accounted for 9% of the world's agricultural exports, including 17% of its corn and 47% of its sunflower oil. These goods were shipped from Black Sea ports to supply populous regions like Egypt, Pakistan, or Indonesia. Ukraine is also endowed with abundant natural resources, boasting 3 significant gas basins, 2 major coal and iron deposits, and various other minerals like lithium and titanium, many of which are critical for the energy transition. While Ukraine exports many of these minerals to the European Union, with iron ore alone comprising 10% of its exports in 2020, the country also processes some of these resources domestically, leveraging its industrial capacity from the Soviet era. Despite these strengths, the war inflicted significant damage on Ukraine's economy, leading to a staggering 35% contraction in 2022. Russia's actions have also dealt lasting blows that jeopardize the nation's long-term economic prospects. Russia's occupation of 50% of Ukraine, including vital industrial assets and fertile lands, along with the destruction of key infrastructure, like Europe's largest nuclear installation and the Nova Kakhovka Dam, have taken a toll. Russian interference in the Black Sea and blocking of shipping lanes have cut off Ukraine's global trade access, compounding its economic challenges. Moreover, Ukraine's population has seen an exodus of around 8 million people, or 20% of its populace, mainly women and children, seeking refuge in the European Union and the United Kingdom. The combination of lost territory, ruined infrastructure, and displaced citizens has significantly eroded Ukraine's economic output, rendering it reliant on Western aid to stay afloat. Hence, it's no surprise that a mere 3 months into the invasion, Ukraine's government unveiled a comprehensive plan not just for post-war recovery, but also to modernize institutions, join the EU, and address long-standing weaknesses like corruption and oligarchic dominance. Ukraine's requirements vary greatly. According to the World Bank, reconstruction may necessitate around €411 billion, while the country's own estimates reach up to €1 trillion. These figures far surpass the aid granted by Western countries to date, which was largely used for immediate survival and military readiness. This compels Ukraine to search for alternative sources of funding, raising the pivotal question of where the necessary financial resources will come from. The first source could be a resumption of Ukraine's pre-war role as a commodities exporter to global markets, selling agricultural products, energy, and its valuable mineral wealth, estimated to be worth trillions. Greater integration with G7 economies and its main market, the European single market, could facilitate this. Ukraine could potentially become a significant provider of commodities, food products, and minerals to some of the world's wealthiest regions. This trajectory is already somewhat in motion, with Ukraine gaining access to nearly the entire EU market as a wartime measure, through the removal of quotas. Although Ukraine's agricultural products are currently excluded, their inclusion could lead to domination of the European market and higher prices. However, this approach generates wealth gradually and might not facilitate the swift reconstruction Ukraine seeks. Joining the EU would expedite this integration, opening doors to EU budgets, primarily the Common Agricultural Policy and the Cohesion Funds. The first offers subsidies to farmers, and if Ukraine joins, its large-scale farms could become significant beneficiaries. This could incite opposition from other European nations and farmers who stand to lose subsidies. The cohesion funds allocate money to economically disadvantaged regions, a category Ukraine falls into. While this could provide substantial funding, it may divert funds from other recipient countries that rely on this crucial EU support. While these funding avenues are plausible, Ukraine's membership in the EU could reshape recipients of these funds and potentially delay its integration into the Union. Another prospective source would be seizing frozen assets from the Russian central bank, amounting to nearly €200 billion deposited in European banks. However, the EU lacks the legal means to confiscate these funds, and doing so might weaken Ukraine's leverage in negotiations with Russia. Consequently, private funding appears to be the most promising avenue due to its potential size. Ukraine aims to attract private capital by undergoing economic liberalization, reducing collective bargaining power and worker protections, leveraging energy and natural resource abundance, low labor costs, skilled workers, and integration into the European market. This strategy could lure companies seeking to establish factories. To effectively entice private capital for reconstruction, Ukraine must fulfill three main prerequisites. First, it needs deeper European integration. Second, it requires a resolution with Russia, leading to clearly defined borders. Ukraine's integration within the EU market is pivotal for its prospects, as it impacts the viability of setting up factories in the country. This integration could be bolstered by eventual EU membership, which seems likely as Ukraine continues to enjoy substantial access to the EU market even prior to formal membership. A settlement with Russia would make Ukraine an attractive and secure investment destination, while defined borders would determine the resources and costs involved in reconstruction. Ukraine's prospects fall within three scenarios. Optimistic scenario: a settlement with Russia is reached, enabling Ukraine to integrate with the EU and global markets, rebuild effectively, and address long-term economic challenges. Compromise scenario: a settlement involves territorial concessions, making reconstruction cheaper but limiting access to resources and agricultural land. The outcome depends on whether Ukraine retains control of vital economic arteries like the Dnieper River. Prolonged conflict scenario: if the war persists, Ukraine's economic recovery would be severely hampered, and the country might remain reliant on the EU. Ukraine's role would likely be limited to commodities and agriculture, without significant value-added processing. A significant risk in all scenarios is demographic collapse, should Ukraine not keep up with economic ambitions, leading to further emigration and brain drain. In conclusion, Ukraine faces complex challenges in financing its post-war reconstruction. Various funding sources are possible, including renewed commodities export, EU integration, private investment, and potentially confiscated assets. However, Ukraine must navigate geopolitical dynamics, resolve conflicts, and pursue sound economic policies to realize its economic potential and ensure its recovery. And with that being said, thank you for watching. If you have found this video to be informative, consider liking, commenting and subscribing. Until next time.